Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So last Friday we were talking about NFTs, and in that video I kind of gave my views on the fact that I feel as though things are moving so quickly that any day now we're going to need Neo to save us from the machines. And when you look at crypto space specifically, and in particular Bitcoin, it is extremely exciting, particularly when you start looking at some of the developments and some of the projections that Bitcoin has now. We've recently had JP Morgan come out and put a bold valuation on Bitcoin, which to the purists won't be a surprise at all, of $143,000 a coin. The thing to notice there is that is an institution saying this. This isn't just anybody now. This is an institution saying this. So in this video, I want to try and attempt to answer the question, is now the time to invest in Bitcoin? An impossible one to answer, but I'm going to attempt. And I'm going to be looking at a number of things around my rationale and around some of the research that I've done specifically for this video. Hopefully you find it useful. This video is really designed for people who are just finding out about Bitcoin and are slightly undecided about what they should do. And of course, I'm going to give you my views and maybe some pointers at the end of this video. So make sure you stick around, that I think are going to be helpful for you if you are just starting out and you're looking at Bitcoin as a serious investment. So let's go. So recently, the value of all crypto has exceeded $1 trillion. Now, you need to take a minute and just think about how much $1 trillion is. It is a lot of money. And when you look at Bitcoin specifically, Bitcoin in 2020 returned as an investment, if you class it as an investment, 302.8%. A huge return. And honestly, I'm an investment guy. I can't think of any fund that has done that kind of return over the last 12 months. So as an investment, solid investment returns over the last 12 months, particularly in an era where we had a pandemic and internationally countries were locked down. Now, when you look at this year specifically, this year has been a big year. I'm going to talk about something called the S-curve fairly shortly. But what we have found is we have seen Tesla, MicroStrategy, and Square buy up $3.9 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that in part has been responsible for the fact that the price of Bitcoin has increased astronomically from 20,000 to where it is right now today. And all of these things are really encouraging signs to whether this kind of technology is going to be adopted and implemented for the long term. Now, this is an S-curve, and an S-curve is essentially a view of how quickly technology is adopted. If you looked at this kind of graph in comparison to something like the telephone, for example, it took many years for the telephone to be adopted. What this S-curve is essentially showing us is that it is being adopted a lot quicker than traditional old technology from back in the day. And a couple of reasons for that, because we are living in such a technologically advanced environment these days. But what we're finding on this is where they feel that we are as of January 2021. And look, you only need to listen to people like Cathie Wood, who are saying that Bitcoin can be seen as an insurance policy, as a hedge against inflation, as a store of value. And this has definitely been borne out by the fact that people like Tesla and MicroStrategies and Square have put money into Bitcoin. And there have been a number of other institutions as well, like BNY Mellon, who have also put a ton of money into Bitcoin. So it feels as though we are now approaching the phase of early adoption, mass adoption of Bitcoin. And that in itself is a really encouraging thing about the cryptocurrency at this point in time. Now, coupled with this, you have to kind of approach this from a pragmatic, dispassionate point of view. And like I've said, I'm a stock market guy. I look at traditional investments. I am a qualified financial advisor, so that's been my remit of where to play. And we talk about, how Bitcoin can be used in the traditional sense of your investments right now. And before we speak about that, though, I think it's really important for us to acknowledge what is going on in the industry, my industry right now. After so many years of Bitcoin producing stellar numbers in performance, the traditional investment industry is now sitting up and they are now paying attention. Because all you need to do is have a look at headlines just like this, which is from today. The likes of Fidelity, a massive, massive investment house, now looking for permission to develop their own Bitcoin ETF. Now, this is really exciting, guys. But before we get into the detail of what a Bitcoin ETF is, some of the pros and cons about it, it's really important to acknowledge how big of a momentous step this is. In fact, there have been so many investment houses since 2017 that have been trying to essentially introduce a Bitcoin ETF. At this point in time, in the United States, the SEC is not having any of it. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the reasons why shortly, and we do have a view here in the UK as well, so I'm going to go over that as well. But you must remember these guys. Well, actually, no. These guys' characters in the social network. These are the Winklevoss twins. And in 2017, they actually submitted an application to the SEC to basically create a Bitcoin ETF. It was turned down back then, but what we're now seeing is the likes of Fidelity now seriously looking at how they can incorporate Bitcoin into traditional investment strategies. Now, what is an ETF? I've done a number of videos on ETFs and explained exactly what they are, but essentially an ETF is an exchange-traded fund. And what the likes of Fidelity are thinking here is that they will create an instrument that will essentially track the performance of Bitcoin. And what that essentially means for you as an investor is that if you want to be invested in Bitcoin, but you don't want to go through the hassle of dealing with exchanges like Coinbase or Binance or Kraken, just to mention a few, and you don't want to have to worry about sourcing your own wallet and then making sure that you've got a strong enough security. I mean, there was a recent story about a guy who was on his last password, the last attempt to access 7,002 Bitcoin, which at that point was worth something like $220 million. At today's rate, I need to calculate that out. I'll put that there. But traditionally, if you go and buy Bitcoin, you have security protocols that are put in place for a good reason to ensure that you don't lose your Bitcoin or someone can't take it from you. But you still have to think about those passwords. We've all seen those phrases that you have to memorize. You have to put them in sequence at different stages, and you have to store that securely. What an ETF will do here is eliminate all of that. It means you don't physically have to own a Bitcoin, but you can certainly be invested in the performance of a Bitcoin, which is the beauty of an exchange-traded fund. It would allow you to have access to that, be able to mimic the performance of it, so you can still get the benefits of almost owning the asset, but you don't physically own the coin. You don't have to worry about any of the security protocols that come alongside that as well. But not only that, a Bitcoin ETF will actually open up a new market, in my view. It will allow individuals, traders, to actually short sell Bitcoin. What do I mean by that? It means if you think that the Bitcoin price is going to go down today, you could place a trade to say that the Bitcoin price is going to go down and potentially make some money from that. So it's really, really, really exciting. You can also have things called exchange traded notes for Bitcoin specifically. There are some of those, by the way, that are available in Europe. But let's think about some of the reasons why Bitcoin was created. And first and foremost was for it to be a decentralized system that cannot be controlled by any government and cannot be controlled by any banking system or country. And therein lies one of the biggest issues that the SEC has with authorizing something like a Bitcoin ETF, because there are fears that, number one, it cannot be controlled. So you can't use monetary policy to affect the value of a Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form, or use it as a measure like you can do fiat currency with inflation rates and so on and so forth to help manage an economy. So it's outside of the system, and that is a problem. You also have the fear that, well, Bitcoin could be used for fraudulent activity. I know that there will be many people who will argue that that isn't the case, but the traditional financial system works on a set of rules, anti-money laundering being one of them. It's very, very hard to be able to track money when you're using Bitcoin that isn't part of the centralized system. These are all issues that plague Bitcoin ETF applications as a whole. In fact, here in the UK, the FCA kind of takes the same view. And as of this year, they actually banned the sale of exchange traded notes, which are available on the continent to UK citizens for exactly the same reasons. So whilst this has been a challenge, I don't think that this is going to be sustainable, and here's why. Recently, the SEC has started opening up feedback from the general public to see if this is something that people actually want. And so far, they have had overwhelming positive feedback that this is something that the public actually wants. And with that, they are going to have to make a decision fairly soon. And with the likes of Fidelity now coming to the table, submitting applications, and investment houses, asset managers queuing up to get in on this action, they are going to have to make a choice. And I don't see how they're going to be able to hold off on that choice moving forward. So where does that leave us at this point in time? Now, in my view, not being able to access Bitcoin ETFs at this point in time is a little bit of a downside. And whilst I believe that the SEC and the FCA are going to have to make a decision, potentially move on the creation and the availability of these things to the general public, here are some thoughts that I think are really, really important. But first and foremost, I think it's really important that we acknowledge the significance of people like Fidelity now submitting applications for a Bitcoin ETF. This will essentially open up Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a whole to a completely new market, a market that holds billions and trillions of dollars under management, the institutional investors. And this is significant for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the sheer volume of cash they have available, but also the implications that it means for everybody investing in the stock market. As it currently sits, you cannot hold Bitcoin inside an investment proposition, to your investment portfolio. You can't. You have to own Bitcoin separately, held separately. What this will essentially do is allow Bitcoin to form part of your investment portfolio in the traditional means. And if that can happen, it means that all of a sudden, because Bitcoin is being viewed as an insurance policy, as a hedge on inflation, or a store of value, these institutional investors will make it widely available once it's signed off to retail investors. And what that essentially means is you'll see an explosion potentially in the use and adoption of Bitcoin moving forward. We talked about the S-curve at the top of this video. That will accelerate even further. So for me, it is a huge, huge step, one that I'm really, really, really excited about. So is now a good time to invest in Bitcoin? Well, the answer to that is yes, it could be, and no, it might not be. It really depends on what your views of Bitcoin are. As all things, you really have to go into something that you understand. And understanding Bitcoin is fundamental to your decision or whether you feel it's going to be the right thing for you to invest in. Now, Bitcoin is known to be quite complex. Cryptocurrencies are known to be quite complex. Bitcoin ETF simplifies that a little bit, but we're still a little bit off. But if you have the ability, there are two ways that you can buy Bitcoin, right? You can buy them directly or indirectly. If you want to buy indirectly, you would use something like an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF. That's still to come. So the only option that you have available right now is to buy directly using one of the exchanges like Binance, Kraken, or Coinbase, like I've already mentioned in this video. Now, you can also get, obviously, Bitcoin with trading apps like Robinhood and eToro. I hold some of my Bitcoin with eToro. If you want to use eToro, I'll leave a link down below. It is pretty darn easy to buy Bitcoin on there, and they also provide you with a wallet as well, which gives you all the security measures that you essentially need. Yes, the purists will say that you need a physical device to actually store your Bitcoin, and I would certainly say that that's a good idea if you're investing large sums of money into Bitcoin as a consideration, but eToro does offer a very easy way for you to access and buy Bitcoin at any given time. So is it a good time? I think in finishing this, I would say for me, I already have a little bit of Bitcoin. Will I be investing more? Absolutely, I will be. But again, guys, please don't take this as financial advice. Use this for educational purposes only. But I think if you're just starting out and you're watching this video thinking, I've been hearing about Bitcoin, I'm really interested in this kind of stuff, here's some key considerations, okay? First and foremost, please do not invest money that you cannot afford to lose. As with any investment, it is an asset class of its own, the values will go up and down. And therefore, with volatility, you have the ability to make money, to also lose money. So please don't invest money that you cannot afford to lose, or money that you're going to need in the short term, because you never know what is going to happen. Secondly, if you are going to incorporate this into your investment portfolio in its current standing, so buying it directly, holding it directly, and storing it separately, please only allocate a portion of your overall investment to Bitcoin. Some people will be bullish, some people will be very, very bearish. I know people who have got a ton of money in Bitcoin, and that forms the largest part of their investment portfolio overall. That approach is fine if you're willing and happy to take that level of risk. So guys, there it is. Is it time to buy Bitcoin? Yes or no? It's not a definitive answer. I'm sorry that I can't give you a definitive answer, but I can only give you my unbiased answer to this. And whilst I will be buying Bitcoin, putting more money into Bitcoin, and these signs are very, very encouraging indeed, I can only do the responsible thing and ask you to err on the side of caution, like I would do with all manner of investments. But guys, let me know what you think. Have you bought Bitcoin already? What cryptocurrencies are you looking at? A lot of people talking about Cardano. There's a lot of people talking about that. SafeMoon is also another one that people are talking about. Let me know in the comments below. How is your Bitcoin or cryptocurrency portfolio invested? Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time. If you've not listened to the podcast this week already, we were talking about diversification. Is it worth it? Go and check it out right there. And as always, guys, remember, money is a tool. Life is for living. Have an amazing weekend. Catch you soon.